I never thought the line between a marriage and a memory could be drawn so quietly. It wasn't screaming. It wasn't broken glass. It wasn't even a confession. It was a sentence delivered like it was part of a grocery list. I'm heading down to the beach house with Melissa this weekend. My husband Daniel didn't look up from his phone when he said it. No hesitation. No flicker of guilt. Just sun, sand, and Melissa. Like those words naturally belong together. Melissa wasn't some random coworker. She was married. 2 kids, a husband who posted Family Fridays every week on social media like clockwork. I had shaken her husband's hand at 3 neighborhood barbecues. I'd brought wine to their housewarming party. I'd laughed politely while Melissa and Daniel stood a little too close near the grill, their shoulders brushing just long enough to make something inside my chest tighten. And now my husband was heading to our beach house with her. Our beach house. I was sitting at the dining table when he said it. My laptop was open in front of me, budget spreadsheets glowing with neat, perfectly aligned numbers. Fixed expenses, forecast projections, every column balanced, unlike my life. I set my coffee mug down carefully so it wouldn't clink. If you go to that house with her, I said calmly, we're done. Finished. He actually scoffed. You don't mean that, Emma. It's just a weekend. It's sun and sand. Nothing serious. There it was. The line in the sand, and he was grinding it down with his heel. He grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door like it was any other Saturday. Texted someone, probably her, and walked out without looking back. Here's what Daniel didn't know. I already had the full picture, and if he wanted witnesses to his choices, I was going to make sure he had them. My name is Emma Winston. I'm not the kind of woman people describe as dramatic. I've never been good at scenes. I don't throw plates. I don't cry in public. If anything, my problem has always been the opposite. When something hurts, I go quiet. I get precise. I'm 38 and I work in operations and finance for a mid-sized company that manages corporate retreats and vendor contracts. It's not glamorous, but it trained my brain into a certain rhythm. Track patterns, verify numbers, anticipate risks before they become emergencies. People laugh when I say spreadsheets calm me down, but it's true. A spreadsheet doesn't lie. It either balances or it doesn't. Daniel and I had been married for 19 years. That's the kind of number that makes people automatically assume you're safe. Like time itself becomes a security system. Like length equals loyalty. We met in our early 20s. I was the organized one, full of planners, color-coded sticky notes, a little too responsible for my age. Daniel was charming in that effortless way. Quick smile, quick jokes, quick to make you feel like you were the only person in a crowded room. When he proposed, it was simple. No flash mob, no cameras, just his hands shaking slightly as he opened the box. I remember thinking, this is what steady love looks like. Not fireworks, not chaos, just choosing each other over and over. For a long time, it felt like we did. We built a routine. We built a home. And about 15 years ago, we bought our vacation property, a weathered beach house in South Shore, the kind of place that smelled like salt and old wood at first. It was a wreck. The kitchen cabinets were warped. The deck boards creaked like complaints. Even the air had that faint, fishy coastal funk that never fully leaves. But I loved it anyway. We fixed it up over time, new paint, new appliances, new railings. Daniel liked telling people how we rescued it. The truth is, I did most of the organizing, the hiring, the scheduling, the paperwork. He did the charming part, the part where he smiled at contractors and said things like, "We're really grateful," while I read every invoice line by line. That beach house became our symbol, the place we went when work got heavy, when family drama got loud, when we needed to remember we were still a team. Which is why hearing Daniel say he was taking Melissa there hit like a quiet car crash. Melissa entered our lives through the neighborhood. Block parties, BBQs, casual conversations over lawn chairs and plastic cups. Her husband Mark was friendly in that polite suburban way, always grilling, always calling someone buddy, always looking like he was trying to prove his life was fine. Melissa, Melissa was different. She had a way of looking at Daniel that felt like a slow, private conversation. It wasn't overt. That's what made it worse. It was subtle enough to deny. Long eye contact. Little laughs at his jokes that were too soft. A hand on his arm that stayed 1 second longer than necessary. I noticed. But I did what women like me often do when we don't want to be that wife. I rationalized. They're just friends. I'm tired. I'm overthinking. We've been married 19 years. Of course I'm safe. And Daniel was careful. Not faithful. Careful. He never came home smelling like perfume. Never left lipstick on his collar. Never forgot a date on the calendar. He wasn't sloppy. He was strategic. So when he suddenly started talking about a project with a team from Baltimore, a project he had mentioned exactly 0 times before, and then claimed it required a full weekend trip with Melissa, I felt the ground shift under my feet. The strangest part wasn't the lie. It was how casually he expected me to swallow it. He even suggested, with this soft fake concern, that I should take time to myself, maybe visit my brother, decompress, like he was doing me a favor while he walked out of our marriage. And that's when my instincts, those boring, unromantic instincts built on contracts and patterns, finally stopped being polite. Because I didn't need a confession. I needed confirmation. And in my world, confirmation is always in the details people forget. The first crack wasn't the beach house. It was Sunday nights. For almost a year, every Sunday at 10:02 p.m., Daniel would suddenly become busy. The timing was so precise it almost impressed me. Not 10 o'clock, not 10:15, always 10:02. "I've got a client in Chicago," he'd say, already halfway to the balcony with his earbuds in. "Time zone mess. Just give me 30 minutes. 30 minutes turned into an hour. An hour turned into him pacing quietly with the sliding door cracked open, like he needed better reception. And here's the part that still makes my stomach twist. Every Sunday at 10:02, I was in the shower. It wasn't planned, not consciously, but it became routine. I'd clear the dinner plates, rinse the glasses, start the dishwasher. Then I'd shower. It felt harmless, normal, until one night I came out early because I'd forgotten my towel. He was standing there in the dark living room, not pacing, not talking, just smiling at his phone. Not stressed, not frustrated, smiling. The second he heard the bathroom door open, his expression snapped back into something performative, serious. Focused. Yeah, he said loudly into the earbuds. We'll push that to Q4. I remember standing there in the hallway, water dripping down my spine, realizing something small but sharp. People don't hum before stressful work calls. And Daniel had been humming. There were other things. Tiny, almost embarrassing things to admit. He started guarding his phone. Not dramatically, just subtly. Screen angled away, notifications muted. He'd flip it face down during dinner, something he'd never done before. He changed his password. Not to something random, to something symbolic. I figured it out because Daniel has always been predictable in his patterns. Numbers tied to memory, years that mattered, pet names, anniversaries. It took me one try. Our anniversary year, and Melissa's middle name. That was the moment my suspicion turned into something colder. I didn't explode. I didn't confront him. I did what I always do. I gathered data. One afternoon, he left his laptop open in the home office while printing retreat documents. A calendar notification flashed for half a second. South Shore Beach, Friday through Sunday. The same weekend, he told me to take space. The same weekend, he insisted this Baltimore project required collaboration. I sat down in his chair. My hands didn't shake. My pulse didn't race. I felt focused. He used the same password for everything. I guessed it again. First try. There was a shared album. Not explicit, just curated. Playlists, mood boards, grocery lists, charcoal, lemons, goat cheese. And buried at the bottom of the list, typed casually between paper towels and rosé, condoms. My breath left my body so slowly, it felt surgical. Not rage, Not heartbreak. Confirmation. They weren't just flirting, they were planning. And what struck me most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the coordination. The effort it takes to lie consistently requires intention. It requires practice. It requires believing you're smarter than everyone watching you. That night, Daniel came home and kissed me on the forehead like he always did, asked what I wanted for dinner, complimented my dress. I smiled back. And that's when something inside me shifted. Not revenge. Not yet. Clarity. Because here's what people don't understand about quiet women. When we stop arguing, it's not because we've surrendered. It's because we've started preparing. The moment Daniel didn't text me, he didn't call, he posted a photo. Her toes half buried in sand, a glass of wine tilted just enough to show off a fresh manicure. The sunset pouring gold through the beach house windows behind her. And in the reflection of the glass, Daniel, shirt unbuttoned, smiling, holding a second glass. No caption. He didn't need one. The message was obvious. I went, "What are you going to do about it?" I stared at the image for a long time. Long enough to notice the wine label, the same vendor I managed for corporate events. The same shipment I had authorized 2 days earlier. He thought the wine magically appearing in the cabinet was fate smiling at his little weekend escape. He didn't know I had scheduled the delivery myself. Guest name at the gate. Pre-approved. Timed. I didn't reply to the photo. Instead, I picked up my phone and made the first call. Mark answered on the second ring. His voice was casual, cheerful. "Hey, Emma, everything okay?" I let 7 seconds pass before I spoke. "Are you home?" There was a pause. "Yeah. I think you should pack an overnight bag." Silence. Then very slowly. "Why?" I didn't dramatize it. I didn't accuse. I laid it out the way I would in a quarterly audit. Calendar entries. Shared albums. Receipts from February. Palm Springs Resort. 2 rooms. Sunday, 10:02 p.m. calls. The reflection in the wine glass. Mark didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he exhaled through his nose. "Well," he said finally, voice tight but steady, "we always wondered." "We?" "My parents are here." Of course they were. "Bring them," I said quietly. Then I made one more call to Daniel's parents. His mother answered. I didn't have to explain much. She's perceptive in a way that feels almost dangerous. "I sense something," she admitted softly. "Your voice has been different lately." "Come to South Shore," I said. "Friday night, dinner at 7. She didn't hesitate. "Your father-in-law and I will be there." After that, I contacted the property manager. Sweet woman. Helped us find that house 15 years ago when it was falling apart. "I need everything stocked for guests," I told her. "Full dinner setup, extra linens, candles." She laughed lightly. "Big reunion?" "Something like that." I also asked her to leave the guest logbook open on the kitchen counter, and I added one small detail myself. In the hallway outside the master bedroom, there used to hang a framed photo from our wedding day. Daniel lifting my veil. Both of us smiling like nothing in the world could fracture us. I replaced it with a copy of a very old, very boring document. Our prenup zoomed in on one specific clause. Infidelity resulting in property reassignment upon confirmed occupancy breach. Daniel never read fine print. Most people don't, but he would. Saturday evening arrived. At 6:42 p.m., gravel crunched in the driveway. Daniel probably assumed it was a delivery. Fresh towels, more wine. He opened the front door and found Mark standing there, pressed navy button-down. Controlled expression. Not yelling, not shaking, just present. Behind him stood his 2 children, one holding a folded beach towel, the other clutching a backpack strap like she'd been told to stay composed. And behind them, Daniel's parents. His mother's eyes scanned the house slowly. "Is this the Winston property?" she asked calmly. Daniel blinked. "Yes, but..." Mark stepped forward slightly. "My wife here?" he asked. Melissa appeared behind Daniel at that exact second. She went pale. Not guilty pale, caught pale. Before either of them could assemble a story, another car pulled into the driveway. I stepped out. Clean white blouse. Jeans. calm, not shaking, not crying. Daniel's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I walked past the children first. "Hi," I said gently. "You can put your bags inside." Then I stepped into the house. "Good evening," I said to the room. "Dinner's at 7. No yelling. No accusations. Just logistics." Melissa tried to speak. "Emma, this isn't—" I lifted one hand. "We'll talk after we eat." The worst part for them wasn't exposure. It was the audience. Because betrayal thrives in private. But in public, it withers. Daniel grabbed Melissa's wrist and dragged her down the hallway toward the laundry room. Their whispers weren't as quiet as they thought. "You said she didn't know," Melissa hissed. "I didn't think—" "That's my wife," Mark's voice cut in from the living room. Silence followed. Thick. Suffocating. I stood on the patio, adjusting the grill temperature like I was hosting a summer gathering. "I figured," I called out calmly, "since everyone's already here, we might as well eat together." The sun dipped lower. Candles flickered. And just like that, our beach house stopped being a secret getaway and became a courtroom. Dinner started without a single raised voice. That was the part that unsettled Daniel the most. If I had screamed, he could have defended himself. If I had cried, he could have positioned himself as the guilty but forgivable husband. If I had thrown something, he could have blamed emotion, but I did none of those things. I plated the salad with steady hands. Arugula, candied pecans, balsamic vinaigrette. My recipe, Melissa noticed. Her fingers tightened around her fork. No one spoke at first. The sound of silverware tapping porcelain echoed louder than the ocean outside. Then Daniel's mother broke the silence. "So," she said gently, almost conversationally, "how long has this been happening?" The fork in Daniel's hand paused midair. Melissa inhaled sharply. Mark didn't look at either of them. He kept cutting his salmon into small, precise pieces. Daniel swallowed. "It's not what it looks like." Wrong answer. His father set his glass down. "Son," he said evenly, "your mother asked a question." Daniel glanced at me. I met his eyes calmly. Not angry, not wounded. Just watching. He started again. "We didn't plan this." Mark let out a quiet breath through his nose. "You booked Palm Springs in February," he said, voice flat. 2 rooms. You told my wife it was a conference." Melissa's face drained of color. Daniel blinked rapidly. "There were flight delays. There was an echo in the hallway when you called me," Mark continued. "You never use speakerphone, except that night." Silence fell again. The children didn't speak, but they weren't confused. Children rarely are. Daniel's mother folded her napkin carefully. "I suppose what surprises me most," she said, "is the coordination. Lying to one person is careless. Lying to 2 families takes effort." Her eyes moved slowly from Daniel to Melissa. "Did it feel worth it?" Melissa opened her mouth, closed it. Daniel reached for his wine glass and realized it was empty. I stood and refilled it for him. Slowly. Steadily. "You always hummed before those Sunday calls," I said quietly. His head snapped toward me. "Every Sunday, 10:02 p.m. Melissa's breath caught. Mark turned to look at her. "That's when she'd shower," I continued softly. "Funny how routines overlap." Daniel tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "You're reading into—" "No," I interrupted calmly. "I stopped reading into things months ago. I started reading facts." No one raised their voice. That was the power of it. Daniel kept glancing at me like he was searching for the woman who used to chase him through arguments, desperate to keep things intact. She wasn't there anymore. Instead, there was a woman who had already grieved, already processed, already moved through denial and into acceptance. Dinner continued in pieces. Conversations shifted in strange clinical directions. "How did you coordinate childcare?" his father asked suddenly. Melissa's head jerked up. "I told Mark I had a girls' retreat," she whispered. Mark nodded once. "You packed matching beach towels." That detail landed heavier than accusations. After dessert, untouched by most, the house shifted into a different kind of quiet. Melissa attempted to walk toward the master bedroom out of habit. The door was locked. A printed sign centered perfectly. "Guests, please use the guest cottage." Her hand trembled as she touched it. She turned slowly. Daniel stood behind her, confused. "Did you lock it?" he asked me. "I did," I answered simply. She stared at me. "You can't." "I can," I said evenly. "And I have." For the first time that night, her composure cracked, not because of shame, but because she realized control had shifted. Daniel whispered something to her about the couch. She snapped back, "You're on it." Mark didn't stay long after. He gathered his children gently. No shouting, no theatrics. Before leaving, he paused near me. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for letting the truth breathe." I nodded. After they drove away, Daniel remained on the porch, shoulders slumped. "I didn't think you'd actually do this," he muttered. "Neither did I replied. That was the honest part. I hadn't imagined it would feel this calm. Not triumphant, not victorious, just clear. Later that night, he found me sitting alone by the cold fire pit. "It wasn't supposed to be real," he said quietly. I looked up at him. "But it was," I answered. "Can we fix this?" I studied his face, the lines I knew by memory. The man I had chosen for almost 2 decades. "You went to the house," I said evenly. "That was your answer." His shoulders sagged. "I thought you'd yell or leave for a few days." "I used to chase you," I admitted softly. The wind moved between us, but I don't anymore. He swallowed hard. "Are you leaving?" "No," I said. He blinked. "You are." For the first time that weekend, Daniel looked afraid. The next morning didn't explode. It dissolved. There were no slammed doors, no dramatic packing scenes, just the slow, deliberate sound of zippers closing. Daniel's parents left first. They moved through the house with quiet dignity, like people attending a funeral they'd seen coming for months. His mother didn't look at him, not out of cruelty, out of disappointment. That kind that doesn't need volume. His father wheeled a modest black suitcase down the hallway. "Call us when you're ready to speak honestly," he said without stopping. Not if. When. The front door clicked shut. Daniel stood in the kitchen staring at nothing. He looked smaller. Melissa and Mark were already gone from the night before, but the impact of their departure lingered like smoke in fabric. You can't air that kind of thing out quickly. Daniel tried to salvage something. "We didn't sleep together here," he said suddenly. I was rinsing a wine glass. The water ran steady over my fingers. "That's the defense?" I asked quietly. "It matters." I turned off the faucet slowly. "No," I said. "It doesn't." He rubbed his hands over his face. "You blindsided me." That almost made me laugh. "I warned you," I replied. "You just didn't believe me." He paced. "Everyone's going to think." "They don't have to think," I cut in. "They saw." That was the escalation. It wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about reputation. The affair had been private, contained, strategic, but now it was documented in witnesses. By noon, his phone started vibrating non-stop. Friends. Mutual acquaintances. His sister. Melissa's name flashed once. He declined it. I watched him unravel, not in fury, but in social consequence. He tried to shift blame subtly. "You embarrassed me." I met his eyes evenly. "No," I said, "you embarrassed yourself. I just scheduled the audience." That silenced him. He stepped outside to take a call. His voice rose for the first time all weekend. "I told you not to come," he snapped into the phone. Pause. "Because it wasn't supposed to." He stopped himself. I didn't need to hear the rest. By late afternoon, his defensiveness turned to something uglier. "You violated my privacy," he accused. "Your privacy?" I repeated calmly. "Or your secrecy?" He flinched. "You went through my laptop." "Yes." "You had no right." "I had a marriage," I said evenly. "That was my right." The argument built in layers. He insisted it wasn't serious. I asked why it required hotel rooms. He said he felt unseen. I asked why he never told me. He said he needed excitement. I asked if humiliation counted. Each answer folded in on itself. By evening, he wasn't angry anymore. He was desperate. "Emma, please," he said softly. 19 years. I didn't respond immediately. 19 years. The number had weight, but weight doesn't equal value if it's already cracked. "You thought I was predictable," I said quietly. You are, he whispered. That's where you were wrong. He stared at me. I know you, he insisted. I shook my head. You know the version of me that tolerated things. That landed harder than shouting would have. He stepped closer. So what? You're just done? I was done the moment you chose the house. His brow furrowed. What does that mean? I walked to the hallway and pointed. The framed prenup clause hung where our wedding photo used to be. His eyes scanned it, then widened. You wouldn't. I did. The infidelity clause was clear. If confirmed breach of marital trust occurred at jointly owned property, ownership could be reassigned. His voice dropped to a whisper. You transferred it. Yes. When? The morning you left. He blinked like he hadn't heard me properly. You gave it to me? I returned it, I corrected softly. His confusion deepened. Why would you do that? Because you wanted it badly enough to risk everything for it. I stepped closer. So now it's yours. He ran his hand through his hair, panic creeping in. You can't just... What are you planning? Nothing dramatic, I said calmly. But understand this, Daniel. I'm not reacting. I'm restructuring. That was when escalation became irreversible, because he realized something crucial. I wasn't fighting to keep him. I was reorganizing my life without him. He followed me out onto the deck that night. The ocean was dark and restless. Are you leaving me? He asked. No, I said. Then what? You're leaving. His chest tightened. You can't throw me out. I tilted my head slightly. Can't I? He laughed nervously. This is my house. I raised one eyebrow. Is it? The silence between us stretched. You wouldn't actually sell it, he said. I didn't answer. The next morning, he found out. The morning the for sale sign went into the sand, the ocean was too calm. That's what I remember most. The tide was low. The sky was pale. The kind of quiet, coastal morning that used to feel like safety. Daniel saw it from the upstairs window first. I was standing in the driveway with a realtor, a woman in her 40s, sharp tan blazer, clipboard tucked against her hip. She spoke in calm, efficient tones about listing strategy, open house traffic, projected offers. Daniel came outside barefoot. Emma, he said, voice thin, what is this? I didn't turn immediately. I let the realtor finish explaining comparable properties in the area. Then I faced him. It's yours, I said evenly. You wanted the house. His jaw tightened. You transferred it. Yes. And now you're selling it? Yes. His confusion turned into something raw. You said I could have it. I did. The wind lifted my hair slightly, and you showed me what that meant. His face drained. You're punishing me. No, I said quietly. I'm closing accounts. That was the moment it hit him. Not rage, loss. Real, irreversible loss. He looked at the house like it might defend him, like the wood siding and balcony rails could somehow argue on his behalf. This was ours, he whispered. You made it yours the second you chose to use it as a secret. The realtor, sensing tension, stepped back politely. Daniel ran a hand over his face. You're serious? Yes. He laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. So that's it? 19 years and you just erase it? That was the dark part. Because standing there, watching him break, I felt something collapse inside me too. Not love. Not exactly. But history. You don't walk away from almost 2 decades without something inside you cracking open. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. That night, after the realtor left and the paperwork was underway, Daniel sat on the deck alone. No wine, no music. Just him and the sound of waves. I stood inside the kitchen doorway for a long time before stepping out. Can we fix this? He asked without looking at me. There was no pride in his voice anymore. No arrogance, just fear. I sat across from him, but not close. Why now? I asked quietly. He swallowed. Because I didn't think you'd actually leave. I'm not leaving, I said. He looked up at me. I already did. The words hung there. He shook his head slowly. I thought it was just something on the side, something temporary, something I could control. You miscalculated. I didn't think you'd stop loving me. That one landed, because I hadn't stopped loving him overnight. Love doesn't vanish. It erodes. Quietly. He leaned forward. I felt invisible, he admitted. And your solution, I said softly, was to make me disappear? Silence. The ocean kept moving. I was bored, he whispered. 19 years reduced to boredom. I closed my eyes briefly. You were bored, I repeated. He nodded once, ashamed. That was the lowest point for me. Not the affair. Not the lies. The realization that everything we built could be jeopardized for something so small, so selfish, so shallow. He reached toward me, not dramatically, just a small movement across the table. I didn't move closer. I'm scared, he admitted. Of what? Being alone. I studied him carefully. For years, I had been afraid of that too. Afraid that if I wasn't accommodating enough, patient enough, forgiving enough, he might drift. And now here he was, terrified of the very thing he created. I'm scared too, I said honestly. His eyes softened. For the first time, I continued, I'm not scared of losing you. I stood. That was the breaking point. Not yelling. Not tears. Just the absence of negotiation. He stayed out there long after I went inside. I lay in the master bedroom, alone, staring at the ceiling. The house felt different, like it already belonged to someone else. Maybe it did. Maybe neither of us truly owned it anymore. By morning, I knew something irreversible had happened, not just between us. Inside me. The woman who would have begged was gone. The offer came in 4 days. 10% over asking. All cash. The realtor called while I was sitting at the kitchen island reviewing documents. Her voice was bright, almost celebratory. Congratulations, she said. You handled this beautifully. Beautifully. That wasn't the word I would have chosen. Daniel was upstairs when I hung up. I heard the slow creak of the floorboards as he paced. He hadn't slept much since the sign went up. I could see it in the hollowness beneath his eyes. When I told him the house was officially under contract, he didn't argue. He just sat down. That fast? He asked quietly. Yes. He stared at the wall where our wedding photo used to hang. I thought you were bluffing. I don't bluff. That was the turning point. Not because the house was selling, but because something else clicked into place. For him. For me. He looked at me differently then. Not as his predictable wife. Not as the woman who would process betrayal like a software update and move on. He finally saw the cost. Not financial. Final. That afternoon, Daniel's sister called. I stepped outside to take it. I heard what happened, she said carefully. From who? From Mom? From Mark? From half the neighborhood. Of course, secrets don't survive sunlight. There was a pause. I'm not calling to judge you, she continued, but I need to ask. Did you already know? Yes. How long? Long enough. Another pause. Why didn't you confront him sooner? I looked out at the water. Because I needed to understand whether I was fighting for something real. And I swallowed slowly. I wasn't. That conversation solidified something inside me. For months, I had questioned myself. Was I too distant? Too focused on work? Too structured? Not spontaneous enough? But the truth was simpler. Faithfulness isn't about excitement. It's about choice. And Daniel had chosen. When I went back inside, he was sitting at the dining table with his phone face down in front of him. Melissa called, he said without looking up. And? She's separating from Mark. I nodded once. He searched my face for something. Sympathy, perhaps. Shared guilt. Shared devastation. He found none. She said this wasn't supposed to happen, he continued. It happened, I replied evenly. He leaned back in his chair. I ruined everything. That was the first honest sentence he'd spoken. Yes, I said softly. He flinched, not at cruelty, but at confirmation. Is there any version of this where we fix it? He asked. I considered the question seriously, not emotionally, strategically. Fixing requires mutual accountability. Repair requires respect. And trust, once audited and found fraudulent, doesn't regenerate easily. I don't want to live with suspicion, I said quietly. I don't want to check phones. I don't want to measure Sunday nights. He closed his eyes. I never thought you'd be the one to walk away. I'm not walking away from love, I said. I'm walking away from humiliation. That distinction mattered. He nodded slowly. I underestimated you. I know. That wasn't arrogance. It was clarity. The turning point wasn't revenge. It wasn't public exposure. It was the moment I stopped trying to be chosen. I chose myself. That night, Daniel packed a suitcase. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Methodically. Like a man finally understanding that consequences aren't loud. They're permanent. He paused at the doorway of the bedroom. I really did love you, he said quietly. I met his eyes. I know. And you? I did too. He nodded once. Then he left. The door closed softly behind him. Not slammed. Not shattered. Just finished. For the first time in 19 years, the house was silent. And instead of fear, I felt something unfamiliar. Peace. As scandals don't explode, they ripple. The house officially closed 2 weeks later. I signed the final documents in a quiet office overlooking the marina. The buyer, a retired couple relocating from Oregon, smiled warmly and told me they'd make beautiful memories here. I wished them well, and I meant it. Daniel didn't attend the closing. He had already moved into a short-term rental inland. I heard that from his sister, not from him. We weren't hostile. We weren't even dramatic. We were distant. The fallout moved through social circles with predictable precision. Mark filed for divorce within a month. Melissa tried to explain the situation publicly, something vague about emotional neglect and personal growth. It didn't land. People rarely sympathize with secrecy once it's documented. Daniel's parents stopped defending him, not loudly, quietly. His mother sent me a handwritten note. You handled yourself with more dignity than we deserved. I'm sorry. I read it twice before folding it neatly and placing it in a drawer. Daniel called once during that first week after he moved out. I almost didn't answer, but I did. How are you? He asked. It sounded like he genuinely didn't know how to speak to me anymore. I'm stable, I said. He exhaled softly. That sounds like you. There was a pause. I didn't realize how much I took you for granted, he admitted. I know. I keep replaying dinner in my head. That was the point. He was quiet for a long time. People think you were ruthless. I looked out the window at the new rental I had just secured. Smaller, cleaner, neutral. No history in the walls. I wasn't ruthless, I said calmly. I was thorough. He let out a faint, humorless laugh. You made it impossible for me to hide. You hid long enough. There was no venom in my voice, just fact. The hardest fallout wasn't social. It was internal. For years, I had defined myself as part of a partnership. Even when it strained, even when I sensed cracks, I held on to the narrative of us. Now there was only me. The first weekend in my new place felt strange. No ocean, no familiar creaks in the hallway, no shared routines. I stood in the kitchen with a mug of coffee and realized something quietly unsettling. I wasn't bracing for anything. No waiting for a late-night text tone. No measuring Sunday nights at 10:02. No analyzing tone shifts. The absence of anxiety felt foreign. Daniel texted once more after that call. I'm starting therapy. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. That's good. He didn't ask to reconcile again. Not after the house sold. Not after the divorce filings circulated. I think the finality of the sale did something no argument could. It removed the illusion of maybe. Melissa and Mark's divorce moved faster than anyone expected. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Mark had kept the house. Melissa moved in with her sister. There was no dramatic confrontation after that weekend. No revenge arcs. Just consequences unfolding at their own pace. Some people told me I went too far. That inviting everyone to the beach house was humiliating. That I could have handled it privately. Maybe. but privacy had already been weaponized against me. Truth needed witnesses. One afternoon, Daniel's sister met me for coffee. "I don't think he understood what he was risking," she said gently. "That's the problem," I replied. "He didn't think." She stirred her drink slowly. "He's not doing well." I felt something flicker. Not guilt, not satisfaction, just distance. "I didn't want him destroyed," I said honestly. "I know." I did not celebrate his unraveling. I did not post cryptic quotes. I did not broadcast strength. I simply reorganized my life, and that was enough. It's been a year. I live farther up the coast now. Smaller place, clean lines, no wedding photos on the walls, no shared history pressed into the floorboards. Sometimes people ask if I regret how I handled it, if I regret the dinner, the witnesses, the sale. I don't. Because here's what I learned. Betrayal thrives in shadows, and I refused to live in one. Daniel once told me I was predictable. He was wrong. I was consistent. There's a difference. Consistent people don't explode. They assess. They document. They decide. I didn't leave in rage. I left in clarity. Love isn't about how long you've invested. It's about whether both people are still choosing each other when no one is watching. He stopped choosing. So I stopped chasing. If you're watching this and you're waiting for someone to prove they value you, stop waiting. Watch what they choose. Watch what they protect. Watch what they risk. And if you ever find yourself standing in your own life, feeling like a guest, remember, you don't need to scream to reclaim your space. Sometimes all you need is the courage to turn on the lights and let the truth speak for itself.